joy to be here with all of you. Did we have a good debate last night? And you know, one of the reasons it was good is because we were actually talking about what a president should be doing to make sure you have the support you need to make the most out of your lives. And I am thrilled that people finally got a chance to compare the Democrats to the Republicans. And I think we came out of that pretty well. I am thrilled to see all of you here in this absolutely beautiful spot. It is such a great pleasure to look out and see so many of you who are committed to making sure that you caucus in the Nevada caucuses, and then we will win Nevada for the Democrats to keep a Democrat in the White House. Now, you know, I think it's important to just kind of get rid of some of the myths that you hear from the other side, starting with a fact that our economy in our country does better when we have a Democrat in the White House. And I think it's important just to put those facts in your head, so when you're talking with some of your open-minded independent friends or you're talking to Republicans, you can tell them that this is not just me saying it. There's a lot of evidence that when we have a Democrat in the White House, unemployment is lower, income is higher, and even the stock market is higher. But when you have a Republican in the White House, you are 4 times more likely to have a recession. I know that the Republicans who are running for president say that they want to go back and do what didn't work before. I think they want us all to forget about the Great Recession, which hit this state really hard. You know, in 2008, we were losing 800,000 jobs a month. We ended up losing 9 million jobs. 9 million people in this country lost their jobs. 5 million lost their homes. After that election, just about a week after it, I got a call from then President-elect Obama, and he asked me to come see him in Chicago. And I didn't know why. It turns out he wanted me to be Secretary of State, which I was very honored to be asked to do. But when I got there, he said, we could fall into a Great Depression. And we could have. I do not think President Obama gets the credit he deserves for saving our economy from what could have been an even worse crisis, saving the auto industry, cracking down on Wall Street abuses, which the Bush administration had been ignoring, and passing the Affordable Care Act, which now provides health insurance to 18 million Americans. So you would think with a record like that, the Republicans might have changed their approach, but not a bit. In fact, you hear only the same things that ended us in the ditch in the first place. Cut taxes on the wealthy, get out of the way of corporations. That's basically all they say about the economy. That is not going to work, folks. I have a different approach. You know, I'm pretty proud of the economic record my husband had at the end of 8 years of his presidency. You know, we had 23 million new jobs. And listen to this, incomes went up for everybody, not just for those at the top, people in the middle, working folks, poor people. Everybody benefited because we had an economy that was working for everybody. And unfortunately, that all changed when the Republicans came back into the White House. And you know what happened. And so President Obama had to dig us out of the ditch. We're out, we're standing, but we're not yet running. I want to do what will work to put more people to work and to raise wages again, because they have not budged. There is something really wrong when CEO pay is 300 times what the typical worker makes. Now, I don't think anybody believes that we're going to be able to get wages rising again unless we have a government with a president who actually cares about making sure hardworking people see the fruits of your labor. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by creating more jobs, by actually investing in putting people to work to build, maintain our roads, our bridges, our airports. We're going to repair our sewer lines, our water lines, our gas lines. We're going to expand broadband so that we have the cheapest, fastest broadband in the world instead of ranking behind so many other countries. We're going to invest in science and research, which will result in a lot of new businesses. I'll give you one example. You know, the Republicans don't want to spend money on anything that actually helps people, and they don't want to invest in the future. Well, we invested $3.8 billion in something called the Human Genome Project 20 years ago. I remember being in the White House the day that my husband announced it had been completed. Now, what does that mean? It means we're going to be able to cure diseases and maybe stop conditions once we understand what causes them. But here's the economic point I want to make. Out of that $3.8 billion investment of your tax money and mine, nearly $1 trillion has been generated. New discoveries, new businesses, new kinds of jobs for the future. You know, we're better at this than anybody in the world. We need to be making those smart investments that are going to make us richer, and we've got to get the Congress to get out of the way and begin to build a better economic future again. I'll tell you another way we're going to make a lot of difference in the economy, create millions of new jobs and businesses, and that is we take climate change seriously, don't we? We're not over with those on the Republican side running for president who every time you ask them, well, what about climate change, they say something like, well, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. Well, there's a very easy way to solve that. Talk to a scientist, why don't you? There are some good ones here at the university. They could tell you what's going on. But it's important that we take this seriously, not only because it is going to affect the lives of every one of us alive, but most importantly, our children and our grandchildren, but because if we do this right, we can create millions of new jobs and businesses. You know, every year, Senator Harry Reid has a big conference about clean energy here in Nevada. I've spoken at it, my husband's spoken at it. Why does he do that? Because he wants people to understand the economic opportunities that are available. You know, it is possible if we invest in wind and solar, advanced biofuels, geothermal, you name it, we can not only begin to reverse the effects of climate change, but we can begin to build our economy in a totally different way. You here in Nevada are doing just that. You've got that big battery factory going in. You've been investing in more solar. In the hotel I stayed in before the debate, I was looking out the window and I saw these solar panels. Driving around today, going to different events, I saw a lot of places with solar panels. Well, I'm setting some big goals for my presidency. By the end of my first term, I want us to have employed 500 million more solar panels to be installed across America. And by the end of my second, I want us to generate enough clean, renewable energy to power every home in America. That is the kind of economic program that will put people to work. When somebody tells you they're worried about jobs going overseas, well, if we do infrastructure at home and we do clean energy at home, those jobs have to be done right here in the United States of America. Now, I also believe, though, we got to change the tax system. I am sick and tired of corporations getting big tax breaks and loopholes and all the rest of it to ship jobs out of America. We need to take away the tax breaks from those corporations and use that money to rebuild our economy right here at home. We need to do whatever we can to raise wages, starting by raising the minimum wage, which has been too low for too long. I know there are people in this audience who work for the minimum wage here, right? I know that. The federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, is a disgrace. Nobody who works full-time should be left in poverty at the end of their working week. So we are going to raise the minimum wage to the highest level it has ever been, back to where it was in 1968. Because since then, we've been on a downward slope. And we're also going to do more to invest in apprenticeship programs, in job training programs. I was at the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades today, looking at how they train their young apprentices. I was so impressed. I know we can train tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to do the jobs that clean energy and infrastructure building require. Now, I'll tell you, there's one other thing that'll raise wages, and it'll raise wages across the board in America, and that is to make sure women get equal pay for equal work. You know, I have to tell you, it's a little embarrassing to be talking about doing this in 2015. But it hasn't been done yet, and a lot of people are losing money because of it. You know, I met a young man last week in New Hampshire who came up to me and he said, "I want to tell you why I'm for you." I said, "Thank you, why?" He said, "I'll tell you. My first job," he was 17 years old, he told me. He got hired to be a cashier in a store near where he lived. He kind of got the job because his mom had been working there for 4 years. And she was doing the same job as a cashier. He was really proud. You know, first real job, you go to work, and he came back, got his first paycheck, showed his mom, and she noticed something. Her son was making $1 more an hour after 1 week than she was making after 4 years. Now, I tell you that story because this young man had no reason to make it up. He wanted to tell me why he was for me. He said, "I never thought about it before." He said, "It's wrong. My mom works really hard. She was raising me, and she should be paid at the same level as any man, including her 17-year-old son." Equal pay is an issue because it's not just a woman's issue. It's a family issue. It's an economic issue. There will be more money in the economy when women are paid fairly for themselves and for their families. And we also need to look at how hard it is to balance family and work. You know, a lot of young parents struggle with that, don't you? I think we should join the rest of the advanced world and have paid leave so that when you have a new baby, when you have a sick relative, you don't lose your job, but you also don't lose your pay for a period of time. You're able to fulfill your family responsibilities. Some people say, well, we can't afford that, but California's been doing this. Connecticut just did paid sick days. Other states are doing it, and it hasn't affected the way that the Republicans say it will for employment. So we've got to take a hard look about what are families like today, not what they were like 50 years ago. What are they like today? And how do we help them do the most important job, which is taking care of each other, while they also do their job making a living? I think it's really important that the tax system be changed so that the wealthy pay more than they're paying right now. I don't think it's right that a millionaire can pay a lower tax rate than a teacher. I just don't think that's right. I agree with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett said every millionaire should have to pay at least 30%, because right now a lot of them are not paying 15%, and a lot of companies aren't paying anything. So part of the job that I will take on as your president is to get the wealthy to pay more and give the middle class a tax cut. Give the middle class that is working hard and doing the best you can in the face of the pressures you face more of a chance to be able to make ends meet. Since your pay hasn't gone up, but the price of everything else has, I think that's exactly what we need to do. You know, the Republicans seem to forget that what makes America great and what makes our economy strong is the middle class. You know, it's the middle class who built this country. It's the middle class that does most of the work. It's the middle class that has to get up every day and take care of their families and their jobs. And I think it's time we start rebuilding the middle class, giving you the tools that you need to make the most out of your own lives, at home and at work. And I'll tell you what else would really help us in the economy, and that is to get comprehensive immigration reform finally taken care of. I really don't like what the Republicans are saying about immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants. We were built by immigrants. Every one of us, you go back, grandparents, great-grandparents, we have somebody who came to this country. And aren't we glad they did? And aren't we relieved that we have the benefit of their hard work? My grandfather came to this country as just a little boy. He was a factory worker. He worked really hard. He didn't ask for much. He made a good living by those standards in those days because of his hard work, but he wanted his kids to have a better chance. And all three of his sons went to college. And my dad became a small businessman after he served in the Navy during World War II. And now I'm here asking you to vote for me for president. That's 3 generations, from my grandfather to my father to me. And if we had time tonight, we could go through this crowd and we could have 1,000 stories like that. Immigration is who we are. Look around us. And I think the Republicans are doing great damage to our nation by their insults and their attacks on immigrants. So, as your president, I will certainly work hard for comprehensive immigration reform, but I will also defend the executive orders that President Obama issued on behalf of dreamers. And I know we've got some dreamers here tonight. Because I want you to work hard in America, and I want you to make a contribution to building our economy. And there are so many examples of people who have. It's also important, though, we give the best possible education to everybody in this country so that you're prepared to be competitive. I will do what I can, working with the teachers of America and respecting the teachers of America, to do what will work in elementary and secondary education to give more young people the best possible start in life. But I'll tell you this, if we don't do something with early childhood education, if we don't help kids, and especially kids whose first language may not be English, if we don't give you a chance to get well prepared for school, then you're not going to go as far as you could. So that's why I believe those first 5 years of life are really important. The family is the first school, the parents are the first teachers, and we need to do more to help you prepare your children to be successful in school. And so I want to have universal pre-kindergarten that will give every child the opportunity to be prepared. And then on the other end, I want to make college affordable so that if you do decide to go to college, you can actually go and graduate. How many of the people in this crowd have student loans? How many have ever had student loans? I had student loans. I had to pay them back. My husband had them. He paid them back. But it wasn't like it is today, where it costs so much and the interest rates are so high. We have 40 million Americans with student loans. I want you to be able to refinance those loans to a lower interest rate and save thousands of dollars. You know, if a corporation can refinance its debt, then a young person in America ought to be able to refinance your debt. And then we need to make college affordable. I want to offer free community college and debt-free tuition at any public college or university so that you can afford to go, because here's what happens. If you're well off, even if your grades weren't that great, you will have the resources to go to college and graduate. But if you're middle class, or you're working, or you're poor, but you're just as ambitious, you're just as willing to do what it takes, you may not have the resources to start, or you may not have the resources to finish. I'm going to do everything I can so that any young person in America can get the job training you want, an apprenticeship if you want it, community college if you want it, 4-year college if you want it, at a price you can pay, and that you'll be able to pay it back as a percentage of the income that you earn. And if you do public service work like teaching or policing or firefighting, you will pay a lower rate to be able to go and get your education. Now, I also want to say the Republicans have tried 54 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. 54 times. Now, if they get a Republican president, they'll succeed. That's up to you. I'll do my part, but I'm going to need each and every one of you to make sure that happens. I will defend the Affordable Care Act. 18 million people are now getting their health care through it. But I do want to make some changes that will improve it. I want to cut the cost of your out-of-pocket expenses. I want to cut the cost of prescription drugs that are skyrocketing beyond the affordability of Americans. I want to make sure that people with mental health problems get taken care of, just like people with physical health problems. I want to make sure that if you are a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's or autism or any other situation, like the professional caregivers or a family caregiver, that you've got some help. You know, we've got millions of people who are taking care of their loved ones, and we've got millions more who are working barely for the minimum wage to take care of people. We can't do that. We got to be smart about how we plan for caregiving as we all face the onslaught of Alzheimer's, or what happens when young people with autism get older. We've got to be prepared for that. And there's something else we need to treat right now, and that's addiction. 23 million people in this country have substance abuse problems, alcohol or drugs. And they can't get help even if they want it. Only 1 in 10 can get help. We've got to have more help and more support for families and for those who are dealing with the addicted. Because right now, they're ending up in jail or they're ending up in the streets, and that is not right. And we end up spending more money than we would. I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time in Iowa these days. Iowa has some good drug courts. I read about one the other day in western Iowa, and they've been doing good work helping folks. But they ran out of money, so they're shutting it down. Let me just tell you this little fact. It costs $3,500 for somebody to go through drug court, be tested to try to get them off drugs, get treatment. If they go to prison, it costs $35,000. Economically, it makes no sense. If we treat people, it's going to save us money and save lives and help them get better and overcome this problem. Now, there's a lot that we have to fight for against the Republicans because they just have a different approach to so many of the issues that I think are important for America today. And I will fight to defend a woman's right to choose, and I will fight against efforts to defund Planned Parenthood, which has provided health care to millions of Americans. I will fight to enforce marriage equality and then fight against discrimination against the LGBT community. I will fight to make sure that when you turn 18, you can vote, and you will not be stopped by laws trying to restrict the vote in America. And I will do everything I can to overturn a decision called Citizens United, which has corrupted our political system. I will also fight to make sure our veterans get the health care they need and deserve, no matter where they live. I will fight to make sure Black Lives Matter by reforming our criminal justice system. And I will try to find ways so that we as Americans can start listening to each other again, talking with each other. I'm tired of the yelling and the insults and the attacks and the snide remarks about people because of their heritage or their religion or who they love or what they do. I'm tired of it. I don't think that's who we are. Now, we can have political differences. We do have political differences. But we should always be treating each other with respect. And that can't happen if you're being yelled at or you're being insulted. I feel that we're missing something right now in our politics. We're not bringing people together to try to find common ground the way we need to, because there's a big group that don't want to try. They believe they have all the answers. I don't think anybody on this earth has all the answers. I think we should be listening and learning from each other. You know, when I was First Lady, we worked really hard to get health care, and we failed. And I said, okay, we failed. What are we going to do now? And I got to work to try to figure out how we were going to insure children. I worked with Republicans and Democrats, and we ended up starting the Children's Health Insurance Program, which takes care and provides health care to 8 million children in America today. And when I went to the Senate, I learned that our National Guard's men and women were not getting health care except when they were deployed. I didn't think that was right. So I teamed up with a Republican senator, Lindsey Graham, who's running for president on the other side. No, listen, we work together. That's my point. You know, we may not work on anything else but that one issue, but it made a difference. We passed a bill to give health care to our National Guardsmen and our National Guards women so they can be healthy and their families can be healthy. And when I was Secretary of State, I worked with Republicans. We negotiated a deal to cut the nuclear weapons in the United States and Russia. And I worked with Republicans to pass it. We had to get 67 votes. It was an important treaty. But we talked to each other. President Obama has tried so hard to find common ground. And he has reached out and he has invited people, and they just get further and further away. And their attitude basically has become, they don't even like their own Speaker of the House. Because in the view of some, he's not 100% with them. I'm not 100% with anybody. And my husband understands that. But our country was built on people talking and then finding those common areas of agreement. That's what we've got to get back to do again. I'll go anywhere, anytime to talk to anybody about finding common ground, but I will also stand my ground. Because I think my job as your president will be to raise incomes for the middle class, to put in place the ladders of opportunity so every child in this country has a chance to live up to his or her God-given potential. And of course, I'm feeling that particularly strongly these days because I now have a granddaughter who is 1 year old. And Bill and I are kind of typical grandparents. Don't get us started. We spent a lot of time, just looking at her, which is for us incredibly wonderful. And we'll do everything we can to make sure she has whatever opportunities she can have in her life. I think every family tries to do that for their children and their grandchildren. We have a lot more blessings. But it's not enough that we do what we can for Charlotte, because it matters what kind of country she becomes an adult in and what kind of world is going to be waiting out there for her. Will it be safe? Will it be prosperous? Will it be peaceful? Will America still be the land of opportunity, where immigrants are welcome and where hard work is rewarded and where people can get ahead and stay ahead? Is that going to be there? Well, I'll tell you, I'm betting that it will. But it's not going to happen by just betting. We have to make it happen. I told you my grandfather was a factory worker. And my granddaughter is the granddaughter of a former president. So for me, it's not enough that the granddaughter of a former president gets ahead. I want to be sure that the granddaughter of factory workers and the grandsons of truck drivers and the grandchildren of teachers and fast food workers and child care workers and everybody who works hard in this country has the same chance to get ahead and make the most out of their God-given potential. That's why I'm running for president. That's why I need your help. Join us to caucus in Nevada, and let's go win in November of 2016. Thank you all very much.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.